Hello, welcome. I'm live, and today I'm excited because I'm joined by a friend of mine who is a longtime friend of mine. He just has something really exciting that he released into the world. It's a book. His name is Ryan Bunch, and the book is called Oz and the Musical. So it's right up my alley. It's my two favorite things combined, the world of The Wizard of Oz and things that are musicals, in this case, Oz musicals. So let me tell you a little bit about Ryan Bunch. He is the author of this new book, Oz and the Musical, which is published by Oxford Press and is available now on Amazon.com and other places. He teaches childhood studies, children's literacies, and popular music at Rutgers and Temple Universities. And he is also the current president of the International Wizard of Oz Club, where since 1957, the International Wizard of Oz Club has been bringing fans together from all around the world. You can head on over to ozclub.org to join. And now let's welcome Ryan Bunch. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm loving your book.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations. Tell me about how it came about, how long it was in the works before we actually got to hold it here.
In some ways, it's been in the works for a very long time. So, as you know, I've been a member of the International Wizard of Oz Club for a very long time, and I've been an Oz fan since I was a child. I also became interested in music at an early age, and so music and Oz have both been a big part of my life. When I went to the University of Maryland to study historical musicology in grad school, I wound up writing my thesis on Over the Rainbow as a queer anthem and looking at some aspects of Oz and music in Oz stage and screen adaptations and their kind of cultural significance in that way. And I put that away for a while I was doing other things, but I re-entered academia later on. And since that was material I'd been working on, and since Oz and musical theater especially were a big part of what I was doing, because I was music directing theatrical productions for school and community musicals. And so I started working on that material again and was presenting at academic conferences on The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz, and suddenly realized that there was a book emerging. And looking back on my experiences and the experiences of a lot of people I know in the Oz Club and in the Oz fan community, I realized that musical versions of The Wizard of Oz are really influential. And so that led me to think about why there's a special relationship between Oz and musicals.
I agree. I mean, we know that Oz has been adapted in many forms. There have been lots of little offshoots, original stories using the characters created by L. Frank Baum himself reinventing his original story to the stage, right? Shortly after the first book was published, he did a musical, I think that opened in Chicago first and then went to Broadway, and then there was a tour and the rest of it, or maybe not even in that order exactly, but was extremely popular and ran for almost a decade. And was still fresh in the minds at MGM when MGM created what we all think of as, you know, the first and the real, because it's so iconic, The Wizard of Oz. Let's start there a little bit. What are your thoughts on Baum's musical version of The Wizard of Oz?
Well, Baum's version is, first of all, it's really important because it may have helped to ensure the popularity of The Wizard of Oz to the extent that he began writing other Oz books. But the musical, which takes the form of what's called an extravaganza, was quite different from the book. This is a form of entertainment that kind of combines a lot of different popular forms of theater from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. There's vaudeville, there's operetta, there's vestiges of blackface minstrelsy, and there's sort of a hodgepodge. What's interesting to me about it is that because it traffics in a lot of the kind of vaudevillian sort of ethnic and immigrant theatrical traditions, despite the fact that it's mainly white people in the production, it carries with it these theatrical traditions of the time that reflect kind of the diversity of America. And I say that with some reservation because there are a lot of like stereotypes that are portrayed there, but there's a lot of play with identity. Characters change ethnicities. They cross-dress. There are performances across the gender line. There are what in opera is called trouser roles, where there are women who play male characters. And so there's this really kind of fluid performance of American identity. And it's very, we call The Wizard of Oz the American fairy tale. And so I'm interested in how these different versions reflect America of its time. And that first one kind of reflects the melting pot as well as kind of the cultural stereotypes that existed about things like race and gender. So it's kind of a wild carnivalesque production, and not really the kind of integrated musical we think about today.
Right. It was kind of like a little bit of story, then they'd stop and just do this completely unrelated musical number, etc. And I think the Wizard of Oz film is credited in great part following Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, is kind of moving the musical genre forward in that the songs further the story, relate to character arc and development and the rest of it. So obviously this movie means a lot to me, a lot to you. Why don't you tell me about your first exposure to it and what you think of it as a musical film?
My earliest memory of the MGM film is being very young, a very young child, maybe 4, and knowing that it was coming on TV again. Because in the days when we grew up, there was an annual broadcast of The Wizard of Oz, and I describe it as a kid national holiday because you really looked forward to it. So my earliest memory is of having already seen the movie and being excited that it was coming on again. And I think that I really loved kind of the Technicolor spectacle of it. There's just this world that it creates with such, in a way, believability, despite the fact that it has a lot of artifice to it at the same time. And I think that drew me in. And I think the kind of musical it is part of that too, that kind of integrated musical that the songwriters were committed to creating.
Yes. The music, I can't imagine The Wizard of Oz without the music, without those songs. We've seen Oz adaptations that aren't musicals. And I always think that the most successful ones, The Wiz, Wicked, The Wizard of Oz, the ones where the music is really good, because there are certainly versions where the music is not as catchy or memorable. But you brought up, because you and I are very close in age.
Yeah,
I'm older, and watching for The Wizard of Oz annually on television before home video existed. I think that's where anxiety began and was created in this human, because that notion of you can't rewind The Wizard of Oz. It was on TV, and everything you're watching, you're kind of like, you're gonna have to wait another year before you get to see it again. You can't pause it. You can't, and so I think that was the beginning and the spawn of anxiety for me. I mean, did you just love that too?
I did. And one of the things that I think is important about that is because you had to wait a whole year to see it again, you might very well reenact the movie with your friends or your siblings. And part of what I think about is important about musical versions of Oz is that they give us these songs that are scripts for re-performing the musical and the story. And they're kind of there, they're in your head, and then you can sing them. And it's sort of, even the choreography of skipping down the yellow brick road gives you kind of a script to follow in recreating the movie on your own. And I think that's part of why the musical has helped make The Wizard of Oz this kind of participatory fairy tale or cultural mythology.
Before we move forward on the other hits, let's just linger for MGM's Oz, because obviously, unlike the other versions we're going to talk about in your book, Oz and the Musical, available now on Amazon.com. I love it. It's a personal account of your relationship with The Wizard of Oz in music, but also a fantastic historical account of Oz musicalized in its best and sometimes worst examples. The MGM, being a film first and then adapted to stage, and there was that Royal Shakespearean, and there were other script versions incorporating the songs that have been tried throughout the ages. But one more recent is Andrew Lloyd Webber's addition of new music to augment the film score to stage. What are your thoughts on that?
When I first heard that Andrew Lloyd Webber was going to do a production of The Wizard of Oz and add his own songs, I thought, aren't Arlen and Harburg, the original songwriters, good enough? I did see this production in London when it was new. And I think it's fine. It's actually it had a beautiful production design. And Lloyd Webber's songs are serviceable. Actually, they do make it in some ways more of a conventional musical in certain ways, because it does give you a little bit more of a continuous flow
they're being
of songs.
so nice, but they just don't fit in with the style of Arlen and
The style
Harper.
is different, yeah.
You know, I mean, do you agree or disagree that, like, I don't think the people I'm about to name would want to do what Webber did. So, you know, God bless him for wanting to, you know, reinvent the Wizard of Oz in a way and keep it a part of pop culture. But like, don't you think Alan Menken or Pasek and Paul or people who's, you know, Stephen Schwartz have sensibilities that could have, in the style of Arlen and Harburg, done new music, would have been better choices? Not that it was a choice. I think it was Andrew Lloyd Webber's choice. That's why.
Yeah, right. I wonder if they would. I wonder who has the audacity to even do it, in a way. But yeah, I mean, all of those songwriters that you just mentioned are, you know, on my personal list of favorites, and it would be very interesting to see what they would do. And they are all versatile, you know, composers too, who can emulate any style. And so yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite version of a musical, and maybe that's why I don't talk about it very much in the book. But it keeps getting produced, and so it is being an influential version.
Right, and I think it is touring, and it is around the UK right now too. If you go to wizardofozmusical.com, you can learn more about that. But we have to gear up for The Wiz, which, speaking of coming back to Broadway, it's happening now. I actually just saw it 3 times in Chicago on its pre-Broadway national tour. Wizmusical.com for tickets where it's playing before it gets to its previews Broadway in late March, and is opening on Broadway April 17th of 2024. But tell me about your first exposure to The Wiz and what you think of it as a musical.
I knew of The Wiz for a long time before I saw it. My first glimpse of it, I was at a cousin's house and it was on, and I saw a little bit of Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow, I think. But later on, when I was more of an active Oz fan in my teens, it finally came out on VHS. And I think that's, well, I also saw it on a small television in a hotel room once with my parents on a road trip. But when it finally came out on VHS, I was very excited to have it. In those days, I did the thing where you would hold a tape recorder up to the TV while the songs were on. And so I recorded the songs that way. And I just listened to them incessantly and sang along to them. And I was so inspired because I was a teenager. So it was the time I was starting to think about life in certain ways. I was so inspired by the songs and how they're about self-discovery and figuring out who you are.
Yeah, and when I first saw The Wiz, I mean, we were too young when it came out in theaters in 1978, but like, I didn't know that it was a musical first. I thought it was just the movie. It was a while later that I learned it was a musical, and then my high school did it, and I got to be in it. Have you ever been yourself in a musical version?
The only time I think that I've been in The Wizard of Oz was around the year 2000. I was in the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C., and we did, you know, an all-male version of The Wizard of Oz. I was one of the Lullaby League munchkins, and so I had to learn to do a little bit of a dance step, which was different. I'm a musician, but I'm not a dancer.
It was choreographed and produced and everything?
Yeah. It was, we used the Royal Shakespeare version, and we put on a big production, and
I have to see a picture of that. Come on.
I would like to see pictures of it too. I should write to them and see if they have pictures.
Or if somebody recorded it. That's a really, really cool idea. Anyway, back to The Wiz. So the movie, then what was your first exposure? Have you seen it on stage, and what are your thoughts of comparing the stage version to the movie?
Yeah, the stage version, have I seen it on stage? I've seen a couple of kind of local or regional productions. There's a company in New York that does it regularly. And it's a very small production in I think it's in a middle school little theater that they do it. Really, really charming. What I love about the stage version is that it is a very kind of straightforward adaptation of Baum, but it has these songs and these other production elements that really dig deep into Black history and culture. It really is a musical that belongs to Black people, and I've talked to a lot of Black people about why it's important to them and their sense of community. and all of that's in the book. And oh yeah, there was a wonderful outdoor production I saw that was very kind of community oriented
Right.
in the interactions with the audience. And so I love kind of how versatile the stage production is in that way. But the songs are really the thing. Like it almost doesn't matter what the libretto is doing.
Well, you say that, but you haven't seen this new version. I'm telling you, it is so. I haven't put my full review yet, but I just recently spoke with Amber Ruffin, who wrote the new book, and Shelley Williams, who's the new director. It is completely different. It is updated, but not in a way that makes it up to date. It's updated to a timelessness. So whereas the original book had some jive and is kind of tied to the 70s, and even when it's done with, when you try to update that, it's still kind of tied to the period that it was created. So I'm excited for you and look forward to you hearing your thoughts of this new Broadway version. But quickly, what did you think of The Wiz live?
I loved The Wiz live. I thought it was great. It really captured the spirit of the stage show, and there were some differences in the script on that too that I thought were interesting, but it was really faithful in terms of kind of structure and the use of the songs and kind of the pageantry of the original. And so I think it's a really great kind of reference performance for something that's close to what the stage version is if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And I thought all the performances were really great.
When are you planning to see The Wiz?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I missed my opportunities to see it when it was in cities close to me because I was so busy teaching. But I'm hoping to catch a preview somewhere. I just have to figure out. I have a little bit of a break now. I'll definitely see it very soon when it comes to Broadway.
Yeah, no, you'll love it. Okay, we have to move on to this one, Wicked, which I've seen 46 times. How many times have you seen it?
I've probably only seen it live about 3 times. But one of the things about theater research is that you draw on a lot of different kinds of sources. And this is true for The Wiz too, which I never got to see the original production of because I was born after it, a few weeks after it opened. So a lot of it is kind of referring back to recorded materials and the score and the soundtrack and all of that. But yeah, I've actually only seen it 3 times. And one of those times was in Dutch. So.
Oh, cool. Did you, obviously we knew the book, the Gregory Maguire book, very different, but great in how it inspired Stephen Schwartz's adaptation. And I love the book. I love the stage musical. I think it's a great example of how both can be enjoyed and live beside and complement one another. When you first saw Wicked the musical, what were your initial thoughts of the music and of it as a musical piece?
I thought it worked really well as a piece of musical theater. I had listened to the cast recording before seeing it. I did see it very early in the run, but the cast recording was out by then. And I had, to tell the truth, been a little underwhelmed by the recording before I saw the show and understood how it all fit together. The other thing I would say about Stephen Schwartz's music, particularly for Wicked, is that it rewards repeated listening because it's really intricately composed and there's wonderful material there. And so I thought it was a great show. Never really imagined that it would run for 20 years. But here we are, and my affection for it has only grown over time.
Yes, same. And so what are your thoughts then of splitting the movie adaptation into 2 parts and learning that there's some new songs coming, at least 2 in part 2?
I'm very excited. I hear people saying that they don't like the idea because it seems like it'll be too sprawling or something. I say the more the better. I'm very excited that there will be 2 movies, that there will be some different ways of approaching it that will be interesting to think about. That's always interesting to me. And I don't mind if it comes a little bit of a kind of small franchise or something. I think the accusation is that that's what they're trying to do, to kind of like squeeze more money out of it or something. But to me, that's just like, having kind of multiple versions of things just creates more points of entry for fandom and participation and making it, part of an ongoing part of our culture.
I agree. And it's like, would you rather sit through a 4-hour movie or two 2-hour movies? I think everybody knows the answer to that. If they're even going to be 2 hours each. Also, I suspect, and I wonder if because we've got Gregory Maguire's sequels and everybody's still there. I wonder if they even signed the cast to a contract in the event of great financial windfall. Could they or would they do Wicked Part 3 even? I mean, that'd be cool. There's
definitely
right
material there to draw on. Yeah,
and that could be film. And then if the film does really well there, then they could adapt that back to the Broadway stage. Would be really neat.
It never ends. Oz just keeps going.
Exactly. So let's talk about a little, let's touch upon these right before we wrap here, because I know we're running out of time. But what are your thoughts on Journey Back to Oz?
Journey Back to Oz. It has some lovely songs in it that have grown on me over the years. I will say that the first time I saw it, I couldn't watch the whole thing at once. Like there's something about it that just doesn't click for me. It's a little bit of a slog. Lovely, lovely songs. But it has all of these famous actors' voices in it, and people think, oh, this is going to be great. It has all of these voices. But I find it a little slow in the pacing, a little bit kind of repetitive or something. Not a favorite, but very interesting to think about in terms of some choices they made, like having Liza Minnelli do the voice of Dorothy, and Mickey Rooney's in it, who is so closely associated with Judy Garland, and Ethel Merman as the witch is just fantastic. I do love
and Margaret Hamilton is the voice of Aunt Em, but still no song for her.
Yeah.
And then of course another one other musical version film, animated, Legends of Oz: Dorothy's Return.
Mm-hmm. This one also, I actually thought that it was really beautiful visually. I would have loved to see a movie with the songs a little bit more kind of thought through in a different way. So it's interesting to think about these kind of these musical versions that have not necessarily been as successful, or although Journey Back to Oz has in some ways stood the test of time because we're still talking about it, 50 years later. But yeah, so musicals that don't necessarily catch on quite as much as the ones that we've talked about before invites us to think about, like the musical doesn't guarantee that it's
right. The songs have to be really, really good. And I think in Journey Back to Oz and Legends of Oz: Dorothy's Return, although I love both of those films, the songs are not as catchy, memorable, well written. Even though the talent is there. I mean, even in Legends of Oz, you've got Leah Michele, one of the greatest living singers, among other great talents too. So it's I think it's not just, would you agree, it's not just that Oz, it's enough for Oz to be adapted to a musical, it has to be adapted to a good musical.
I think that's right. And we might even reflect on the fact that although Baum's musical was popular in its time, it's not the kind of musical that really translates across time to us. It's a very strange thing to modern audiences.
Yeah, I'm almost doing a disservice because we don't have enough time to really, really go into everything. But I like to kind of keep things a little tight. But the book is Oz and the Musical. Ryan Bunch, you're amazing. Again, I want to let people know that if they want to learn more about you or the International Wizard of Oz Club, they can head over to ozclub.org to become a member of that great, it's the official Wizard of Oz fan club. And it's great. You and I have both been members for decades. You're the current president. We'll have to talk about that soon on an episode of Oz Talk.
Okay.
But I do want to let everyone know too that Oz and the Musical is available now on Amazon.com and other places. And Ryan, where are you available if people want to follow you on social media?
I can be found I have an author page on Facebook. I have a personal page that I'm pretty liberal about using it for public purposes. I'm on Twitter or former Twitter.
What's your Instagram?
Huh?
Is just at Ryan Bunch?
Yeah.
Great. That's simple.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm very Googleable, so
yes.
You can find me in various ways.
Excellent. Well, it's perfectly timed for a stocking stuffer or a great holiday gift. Ryan, thank you so much. And again, everybody check out Oz and the Musical.
Thank you.